Inuit woman went into labor at 60°W, until a feared hunter carved a path through the storm. Annana's breath came in ragged gasps as the snow whipped against the walls of her karmak. Each gust rattled ice-crusted sod, reminding her that the mercury had plunged to 60°C. Pain bloomed low in her belly, sharp and insistent, and she knew the time had come. Her midwife was stranded half a day's travel east, her husband hunting seals on the distant floe under the dancing aurora borealis. Inside the dimly lit dwelling, Annana sank to her knees, clutching the rough-woven parka that draped her shoulders. The quillik's flickering flame cast orange shadows on the packed snow floor, dancing across her sweat-slicked skin. Outside, a single polar dog whimpered, his paws skidding on frozen ground. He pressed his muzzle to the ridgepole, as if seeking warmth he could not find. Her thoughts drifted to the veil of winds beyond the ice, a white wall swallowing her home. The temperature was lethal, but the pangs were fiercer still. She raised her head to catch a glimpse of the undulating curtains of green light, a silent witness to her ordeal. The first contraction subsided. She closed her eyes, murmuring the words her mother taught her. "Spirits of the north, guide this child safely." Her voice trembled and faded against the roar of the storm, and then, at the edge of her will, she whispered, "Please." She listened for footsteps in the snow, any sign of rescue. Legends told of Takik, the feared hunter who could carve paths through the fiercest blizzards. Some said he spoke to the ice itself and beckoned a way forward. As another contraction seized her, Annana wondered if those tales were truth or only stories whispered to drown fear. Yet despite her doubts, hope flickered like the quillik's flame. Outside, the storm howled like an ancient beast. The winter sun had long since slipped beneath the horizon, and the settlement of igloos lay in uneasy darkness. Inside the communal hall, the council of elders huddled around a battered table carved from driftwood. Frost traced spiderweb patterns on the wooden walls, and each breath hung like smoke in the frigid air. Elders murmured in low tones. "No kamutik could cross the broken floe tonight," grumbled Ikaluk, his face etched with worry. "And the seals have vanished north of the ridge." His companion Siku stroked her chin. "Only one man knows this ice," she said. "Takik the Frostwalker, feared by our hunters, yet trusted by the winds themselves." The name fell like a bone throw into the fire, sparking hope and hesitation. Takik was a legend, a solitary figure who moved between the snowfields like a ghost. He carried an ulu carved by his lost father, a tool he used to map paths by etching marks into ice ridges. But rumors spread of his iron heart and cold judgments. Some blamed him for the deaths that followed his return from past storms. Others whispered that he had tamed spirits so wild they answered his call. Kalik, Annana's older brother, tightened his fist around a carved ivory talisman. "We must send for him," he declared, voice trembling. "Without his guidance, our sister will die." A hush fell. To summon Takik was to expose vulnerability, to admit they could not conquer the storm on their own. Yet the birth of a child demanded courage beyond fear. As drums of the wind pounded on the walls, a runner volunteered, wrapping his fur cloak against the gale. By dawn, he would reach Takik's solitary camp. The courtroom of ice had spoken. Salvation lay in the hands of the feared hunter. Dawn arrived in pale shades of blue and grey as the runner crunched through knee-deep drifts. The gale tore at his parka, and shards of ice stung his cheeks, but he pressed on toward the lone camp. A cluster of driftwood shelters marked the place, their roofs heavy with snow. Smoke curled upward, the only sign of life in the white wasteland. Inside, Takik sat cross-legged on a hide, his ulu resting across his lap. He traced lines in the ice with deliberate slashes, each groove a map of hidden crevasses and thin spots. Legend said he could read the ice like a book, and tonight he would prove it. At the sound of footsteps, he looked up, his gaze sharp as a frozen blade. The runner knelt, panting. "They asked for you, my sister, she's in labor." Takik rose without a word, slipping his ulu into a carved sheath. He donned an extra layer of fur and stepped outside, where the storm had swelled into a white ocean. His boots left deep prints, marking a path that vanished behind him almost immediately. Yet he trusted the cut channels, the muescas he carved, to guide him. With each step, he sang an ancient chant, calling upon the spirits of the ice. The wind moaned, testing his resolve. Snow met his boots in towering waves, but Takik advanced with silent purpose, his breaths measured and calm. Twice he paused to recarve a marker, 3 nicks side by side, a sign to follow if ever one got lost. Blood pricked at his fingers, seeping into the ice, but he pressed onward. Pain was a partner in the hunt, fear an adversary. By midday, he reached the edge of the floe that led back to the village. He paused, scanning the horizon where broken ice jutted like cathedral spires. He knew the risk. One false step could plunge him into the frigid depths. Yet with a final carve and a sharp whistle, Takik unleashed his sled dogs, and they tore into the storm, finding the way he had laid. Takik's kamutik surged forward as the dogs rasped through the storm, their paws carving tracks in the whirling drifts. Each breath of wind hit them like molten ice, yet they pressed on, guided by the markers he had carved earlier. The sky was a uniform swirl of white, a living wall that threatened to swallow them whole. Inside the compact sled basket, Takik checked the bindings on the Kulik oil lamp. It flickered feebly, casting long, wavering shadows on the sled's fur-lined sides. He knew its dim glow would be crucial once he reached Anana's Karmak, but for now, it was a fragile beacon in the blizzard. Ahead, the lead dog, a broad-chested Malamute named Sila, let out a guttural bark. Sila sensed something, a shift in the wind's rhythm, a whisper of familiar ground. Takik's mind drifted to the stories he heard as a child, hunters who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the storm forever. He tightened his grip on the sled's handle and recited a low refrain, a prayer to the spirits of the tundra. His voice, deep and steady, cut through the howl, commanding the path to reveal itself. Behind him, smaller dogs scrambled to keep pace, their tongues flicking in and out, frost glinting on their fur. Minutes stretched into hours as the sled creaked and rolled. His ears rang with the wind's roar, but within, a calm clarity settled. Takik remembered his father's lessons. When ice and wind unite against you, become one with them. Feel the pulse of each gust. Follow the whispers beneath the howl. And so he listened until he heard the faintest echo of human cry. "Anana!" he called, his voice muffled by furs. The cry came again, weaker but unmistakable, a plea for help. He raised a gloved hand, cutting 3 swift slashes in the air, the mark of his path. The dogs veered left, following invisible grooves in the snow. The Karmak loomed like a pale monument, its entrance a swaying curtain of skins. Takik jumped off the sled, braced himself against the gale, and plunged into the storm-blasted vestibule, the red glow of the Kulik beckoning him onward. Takik pushed aside the fur curtain, stepping into the cramped Karmak where Anana lay on a bed of reindeer hides. The Kulik's fragile flame sputtered, its orange glow flickering across her ashen face. The air felt brittle with cold, each inhalation a stinging reminder of how narrow their margin for error had become. Anana's breaths came in relentless waves as another contraction seized her. She pressed one trembling hand to her belly, gauging the child's position. Takik moved with quiet urgency, scooping embers from the oil lamp and heating flat stones he carried in a small sealskin pouch. He arranged them around the birthing mat, their warmth seeping into the snow-chilled floor. Her moans echoed against the sod walls, and sweat beaded at her hairline. Takik knelt beside her, voice low and steady. "Breathe with me," he urged, cupping an ember-warmed cloth to her lips. She obeyed, inhaling the faint scent of seal fat and willow bark. Outside, the storm rattled the walls, but inside a fragile peace held. He dipped a carving tool into boiled reindeer marrow, mixing it with medicinal herbs Uvanga once taught him to use. With careful hands, he applied the salve to Anana's abdomen, massaging in gentle circles to ease the passage. Each movement carried the memory of his wife's final moments, her whispered hopes, her final breath. A sudden roar of wind outside made the Kulik gutter. Takik darted to shield the lamp, but a blast of snow swept in, extinguishing the flame. Darkness closed around them. Anana cried out, panic rising with the blackout. Takik's heart thundered, but he struck lightly on the stones, sparking a flint that ignited the embers. Light returned, dancing against crystal walls. Her eyes found his in the glow. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thin but resolute. Takik nodded, though his chest tightened. They both knew the hardest moment lay ahead, the child's final emergence into a world of ice and wind. But for now, they fought together, two lives tethered by a single, fragile flame. Between each agonizing spasm, Anana's thoughts drifted to the old legend of Scylla, the mother of the north wind, who protected brave hearts in terrible cold. Through chattering teeth, she whispered the ancient invocation, voice trembling like a reed in the frost. "Scylla, hear me. Shield this child." Takik listened, every muscle tense. He recognized the melody. His late wife had sung it while stitching furs by the fire. Pain stabbed his chest. He forced himself to focus on Anana's needs, pressing a warm stone gently against her lower back. Outside, the storm raged with renewed fury. Each roar of wind rattled the sod walls, like the cries of lost spirits. But inside the Karmak, Takik's presence was a bastion of calm. He whispered encouragement, "Stay with me, Anana. Every breath is a step closer." Anana nodded, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Her hand found Takik's, and she squeezed it, a silent plea for strength. Memories flooded him, her laughter echoing in summer nights, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the aurora dance. His jaw clenched. He would not fail her now. He adjusted the placement of heated stones, ensuring they pressed where the pain cut deepest. Then he began a low hum, the same tune Anana sang. Its gentle cadence wove through the storm's fury, holding back panic. The rhythm steadied her breathing, and for a moment, the howling wind seemed to soften. But the hardest test lay ahead, guiding the baby's shoulders through the narrow birth canal. Takik swallowed the lump in his throat, steeling himself for what he must do. There was no midwife's practiced hand, only his determination. With steady voice he counted down each contraction, anchoring them both in the battle against ice and fate. Takik stumbled into the Karmak under the weight of urgency and cold. He knelt beside Anana, now drenched in sweat and blood. Uvanga's herbs steamed against her skin, releasing a faint, healing aroma. The final phase had begun. The shoulders must pass, and time was slipping with each heartbeat. He set to work with careful precision, his hands steady in the low light. Anana's gasps filled the tight space as he applied medicinal lichen paste and guided the crown with gentle, practiced pressure. Outside, the storm's howl had dwindled to a whisper, and the first pale glow of dawn touched the horizon, tinting the snow in soft pinks and golds. As the child's shoulders emerged, blood spattered against the snow-dusted mat, painting it in crimson drips. The little body slipped free into Takik's arms, slick and trembling. He held the newborn close, cupping its head against his chest, letting the warmth of his fur transfer through the thin skin. Its tiny fists curled in reflex, a promise of life. Anana collapsed back onto the hides, tears mingling with sweat. "Is—" she croaked. Takik pressed a finger to her lips, voice warm with relief. "A boy," he announced softly. "He is strong." Outside, the sky erupted in muted shades of rose and gold. Light spilled across the horizon, illuminating the sod walls and tracing each carved marker on the path. Moments later, the midwife burst in, breathless, her cheeks flushed pink. She crossed herself, then bent to examine mother and child. "He is healthy," she declared, voice filled with awe. Anana wept openly, clutching her son. The quillik flickered as if in applause, casting dancing light on the scene. In the fragile dawn, life had carved its path through ice and storm. The wind stilled, and for a moment all was silent save for the newborn's soft cry, echoing hope for the entire tribe. The dawn sun rose higher, painting the snowfields in shades of pale sapphire. Outside Anana's Karmak, the village gathered in hushed reverence, their breath rising like prayer in the crisp air. Word had spread. A child was born in the eye of the storm, a testament to courage and unity. Takik emerged from the shelter, his fur parka heavy with sweat and frost. He cradled the newborn against his chest, keeping him close to his heartbeat. Anana appeared at the doorway, wrapped in furs and radiating exhaustion and elation. Her eyes met Takik's, and in that moment, no word was needed. They had carved a path together. The elders approached first. Ikaluk extended a carved ivory token, the symbol of protection, and placed it in Takik's gloved hand. "You have tamed the storm," the old man said, voice trembling. "How you have brought life through death's cold grip." Takik bowed, uncertain. The token felt heavy with respect he had never known he desired. Children clustered around, curious and bright. Anana knelt and offered her son, wrapped in sealskin, for them to behold. They pointed, whispered, and giggled, their young faces reflecting wonder. The baby's cry echoed once more, clear and strong, as if heralding a new era. The tribe's hunters, once wary of Takik, now exchanged nods of gratitude. An breeze stirred, carrying the scent of melting ice and distant seals. The sky above shimmered in pastel ribbons, the aurora's farewell after the night's fury. Takik lifted his gaze to the heavens, feeling the storm's spirit recede. He reached for Anana's hand, and she placed their son's tiny fist against his palm. Together, they walked toward the circle of igloos, steps measured and sure. Each footfall left a mark on the virgin snow, a silent promise of new beginnings. The child cooed softly, and the world held its breath in awe of life's fragile victory. At the center of the village, the midwife gathered offerings of driftwood, seal oil, and herbs. She lit a small fire, its smoke spiraling upward, carrying prayers to the spirits of ice and wind. The crowd formed a ring, voices rising in an old lullaby, weaving hope into the newborn's destiny. Takik looked around at faces both familiar and new. He felt hope bloom in his chest, a warmth stronger than any Quillic flame. The hunt for survival had forged a deeper purpose, to nurture and protect life. Beneath the bluest sky and after the darkest night, the tribe stood unified, ready to face whatever storms lay ahead. As we watch new life emerge against the harshest odds, let it remind us that courage, compassion, and community can carve a path even through the coldest storms. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. What does this Inuit tale teach you about resilience? And be sure to subscribe for more journeys of hope, courage, and the human spirit.